let's get into it. All right, so how to install your 370Z insert. First thing you want to do is take off this bezel just by lifting it up. You may need a panel removal tool if you haven't removed this before, only because these little compression clips are going to be locked into this, okay? Also, you need a flat blade screwdriver, something small like this pick to push in there, okay? And then this slides right on out. The next step is to lift up on this. You want to make sure you lift up on the back side and then slide it out. Try not to damage anything because these clips will be recessed underneath. Okay, so now what you need to do is remove all your screws, your 3 screws here, and then do the same for the other side. So next you just want to pull out on it like that. Keep in mind that there's tabs, these metal ones that are gonna, these ones, that are gonna create some resistance in the plastic, so you could just pull those straight out. Okay, so now what you want to do after all that's taken out and those 2 screws, you want to pull back on these. So just pull them out, and then also on the top. Remember, it's gonna take some force if you haven't taken this apart yet. It's gonna take a little bit of prying force, so keep that in mind. Use 2 hands when prying this stuff out. I only have 1 hand because I'm trying to film it for you guys, but definitely consider 2 hands, okay? Before prying any of this back section out, what you need to do is take off your key or your push to start, and by doing so you're just gonna pull straight out. Make sure these tabs are compressed. You might need to slide something in there to pop it out, or you could take this ring straight out with the panel removal tool like this, okay? And then you're gonna press that clip in and slide this whole thing outward. So once you're done prying this out, you're gonna cam it to one side, okay? Use 2 hands to pull this outward because there's gonna be tabs up there, tabs over there, here on that side. As you can see, there's these little inserts here that the tabs go into. And then you're gonna wanna take that off the same way you take the ignition off by compressing that little tab there, okay? So keep in mind that the tabs are on the bottom of this, so it's gonna look like that. So you're gonna have to push up from the bottom side to get these out. So of course you're gonna have the original cubby insert in here. What you're gonna have to do is just take out that screw and that screw. Same thing for the other side for your air vents. These pop straight out. Keep in mind that they are clipped on the side, so you do have some type of clipping here. So once you take it off, you're gonna have to pry that up. And then this insert goes in position of where your cubby would have been to begin with, okay? So fit in there like that. So this is all factory, just straight plug and play, the same exact way. So when screwing your backing or the front plate in on the back side, these 2 screws in particular, you're going to want to squeeze this inward this way and this one inward this way, because when you screw it down, if you don't pinch these together, there'll be a gap here because it doesn't have a bracing like how this one has a bracing on top. You'll see that it's open, so you're able to pull it inward and outward relatively easily. So you want to make sure when you put it in that your edges here are almost perfectly aligned, okay? So it'll look like that. If not, you'll have these big old gaps here that push it out that way, and then the same thing with this side if it's not in properly. Depending on if you're going to run a charger on here or not, it has the option to plug in from the side, which will be this side, the left side. If you're looking at this from the back, it'd be the right side if you're looking at it from the front. But I had to carve out this area in the center into a rectangle, As you can see, it's kind of like a loop here and it's rectangular here. The reason for that is because this aligns right on this side, and it allows for the head of a charger to stick out on this side. So it's depending on what charger you get, which plug, the head might protrude out here a little bit more than you expect. So you're gonna have to cut some of that out, as I did. Don't go too much, because if you cut out too much, you'll start cutting into your vent. As you can see, I took that about half the thickness down. You may have to shave off a little bit more. This one doesn't fit perfectly. I'm gonna have to shave off a little bit more on the back side of it, or I will have to cut a slot right in here that lines up with the back side of that, even though I shaved off a lot. That was for the creations cable, so that way that could recess back into that air duct itself a little bit. So keep that in mind. But what I recommend you doing is probably shaving it off the cable first. See how much you could grind off whatever cable it is that you purchase. So that way when you take your iPad out, you could remove it a lot easier. So when you get to this point, if you don't shave enough off and it sticks out this way, you won't be able to get your iPad out. So you're gonna have to make sure that you shave off enough. And the reason why you're gonna have to shave this stuff off is because on the back side of this, there's not enough width here. Everything's really tight and confined. If it wasn't, I would give you a lot more room, but the constraints I have is this distance here. And as you can see, even on the top side of it, the iPad kind of recesses in a little bit more on the top because it curves inward this way as you get to the top of the your beauty ring. You're gonna go with the magnetic setup, so you just barely have to pull away a little bit and then it would allow it to cam outward. That's fine. Just make sure the magnet that is used on your cable is strong enough to support the weight of this, because there's a little bit of gap here that you have for wiggle room, only because I know some people are going to want to paint this. So I gave it about 60 thousandths of gap for it to float up and down. Okay, so that way it's paintable. And you want to be able to support that weight on this end, because the magnet's going to support the weight over here. So with this cable that I recommend you're getting, if it's a 90, this one in particular was able to grind down all the way flush with this back of this cable. And as you can see, it shows some white epoxy in there, but it does not protrude through. So you could cut that flush just like that. And then now we'll mount it to the actual insert right now. I'm going to stick this on the back of your iPad, whatever one I give you. Okay. And I'm just simulating how it's going to look. So once that's on the back, then you put your iPad on top, just like so. So that way it's on the back side. And then from there, you need spacers. These are the same magnetic metal strips, but you could put anything you have, like newspaper or whatever. Just to keep it evenly spaced when you do this, slide it all the way to one end and put tape on here from this side to this side to push it that way. So this is what it should look like. You should have tape that pulls it this way, and then you should have some type of spacers that keep it centered up. You could favor the bottom if you'd like. It's totally up to you. I like things symmetric, so I just put spacers in there. But yeah, you could let gravity kind of hold it down to the bottom. So what I ended up doing was using your standard super glue, but this is the thick gel stuff. You can get away with the liquid stuff. The reason why I prefer gel is because it doesn't run and it allows you to fill in voids. Okay, and then the reason why it's white is because I use baking soda to harden it a lot faster. If you use the liquid stuff versus the gel stuff, liquid will harden a lot faster, with baking soda, so keep that in mind. But I prefer the gel. Also, you're going to need a Sharpie just to color that in if you'd like to make it aesthetically pleasing, even though you won't see it. Okay, because that's going to be tucked behind the your beauty cover that goes over it from the factory. So you can use epoxy that is okay with PETG and whatever rubbery covering your plug has. But the reason why I chose your super glue by Fast Cap, this one is because it basically adheres to mostly everything. So, and it's something that most people have on hand. So as far as this back piece is concerned, it relies on friction fit. So it just sits in there. But once this is in, it's gonna press up against here, causing this to seat all the way back and not have any movement in here at all. So keep that in mind. But when doing so, what you're gonna have to do here is remove a few of these parts here. This back piece right here, I ground it flush, so you're gonna have to grind yours flush, just so that way it could maximize your space. I was trying to maximize it. You could use a cutoff wheel to cut off all those tabs or whatever you want. Sand them down. And then also the brackets that hold your radio here, I cut those off. Those are no longer needed. If you notice, keep in mind it does move this radio, but once everything's put back into place, this thing's solid again, so you don't have to worry about those. Okay, and then I'm gonna also include some foam where you could actually put the foam on the side or on the backing, so that way when you put this insert in, if you cut too much off for some reason, which you shouldn't be able to because it's flat, but if for some reason you cut all this out for whatever reason it is, you just messed up big time, I'm still including some foam so that way it will press up against what's already there to create a friction fit again. Or if for some reason you cut too much off the sides, which you shouldn't be able to, I'll give you that as well, the foam to put along the sides if you need that. But like I said, you shouldn't need it at all. You're also gonna have to get rid of the lip that's here, so it looks like that, because there was like a little tab here, so keep that in mind as well. None of this stuff is gonna mess up anything from factory. Your stuff will be fully functional even if you wanted to go back to the original style, because remember it's all bolted onto here. So by cutting this stuff, you could still go back to the original factory setup at any time. If you're really interested in how I actually cut everything out, I'll leave in the description below the other video where I did the full installation. From here, you put the foam in the areas you want it if you need it. Like I said, mine didn't need it, so I just set that back in there like that. It just seats in. Of course it's not locked down until you put the other piece on, this piece, and then you just reverse the whole process of your entire dash, and then it's good to go. Okay, so another spot you could put the foam is in here to take up this gap here. So you could put the strip of foam down in there to hold this back, just so that way it makes a nice seal in there. And if you put anything in there that's tiny, it won't slide out. But it should hit on the back side of this. But there'll be a little gap around the edges. So if you're trying to put change in there, I recommend putting that foam strip that I'm gonna give you down in here, so that way it keeps anything from sliding forward, even though this is gonna be at an angle. But that's just another option for you where you can put the foam itself. So this is what it looks like once everything's installed. Of course, I'm gonna refine it a little bit better. In terms of this gap here, I'm going to try to get rid of that. But everything else, the fit and finish is pretty nice, I'd say. And I mean, you could leave it like this. There's going to be these machining marks, and I can't get rid of those. That's how it 3D prints, and that's why I wanted to make a mold. But like I said, it's a lot harder to make a mold because it requires drafts and stuff on the material, the angles and stuff at which the mold gets pulled out. So that's a little bit more cumbersome, and this is a little bit more expensive, this setup, to make, only because the time it takes to produce it. When you decide to take it out and slide it out, you cam it over like that, you remove it. This first iteration will have a drain hole down there, and it's not really for any water draining. It's to route cables out through the back. So if you do want to route a cable, you could route it up here and plug in your iPhone or your phone into here to let it charge. So like I mentioned before, 3D printing this takes a lot of time, so the turnaround rate on these are not going to be fast. This was a how-to video on how to install this whole thing, and what it's going to take for you to install it, and whether or not it's something that you want to tackle. I don't want to sell you something that you're not going to be happy with. But as of now, I'm not going to paint any of these. I'm not going to do anything. It's going to be up to you to get all your cords that you want, because some people may need a longer cord than the one I would provide. So I'm going to leave that all up to you. And I show you how to do all that, but you may need a longer cord, or you may need a shorter one, depending on where you're going to plug it into, either right there or in here. And then also some people may want the magnetic quick detach plug. So I'm going to leave that up to you to decide what you want to do. So some of the recommendations I recommend you doing is, of course, using some sandable primer. Once you get the sandable primer on there, you know, you wet sand it, get it all smooth, and then paint it. For the back, which you can also do for the back side of it, is you could put felt or whatever fabric, custom fabric you want to put in there with some spray glue, and then that will hold it up in there, and it will look really nice. So that's going to complete today's little install. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you like this video on how to install your cubby, definitely give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing. Until next time, I'll see y'all in the next one.